Hello and welcome to Judgment Engine. I am Jarrett. He is
I'm
Justin. Oh God. Okay. We talk about movies and TV shows and usually give our terrible opinions, but sometimes they're good on occasion.
uh, okay. All right. On
So
occasion. Fair.
we're rolling with that idea, and today we are talking about the new and exciting WandaVision.
WandaVision is a new show on Disney Plus. They've only released 2 episodes so far. In our opinion, those 2 episodes are kind of the pilot, so we're just going to talk about them both at the same time. We'll give you a spoiler-free review first. Talk about whether we want to keep watching, except whether you should keep watching, and then we'll kind of dig into a more spoilerific discussion. So why don't we just kick off? How did this show make you feel, Jarrett? What are your what are your internal gut organs telling you about this show?
I have no idea why this show
Specifically, the
exists.
duodenum, if you can. Go ahead.
Can you say that again?
Specifically, the duodenum. That's the organ I'm most interested to hear from you. So,
Okay. Um, we're gonna say that my dodecahedron does not feel particularly good about this show. Not because it hates this show, but because it doesn't know why this show exists, or who this show is for, or what the ultimate plan is for the show. I have stayed pretty much, I guess, like spoiler free concerning it, so I was pretty blind going in. And two
a
episodes
rarity,
in,
you
yeah, 2 episodes in, I still feel pretty blind. So
say.
you can go.
Mhm. So in my opinion, I think there's something interesting going on here. We'll talk about it more in depth, but there's definitely like a Peaks vibe that they seem to be slow playing into, and I think that could eventually pay off. The episodes we saw was definitely a show that I wouldn't necessarily keep watching if it didn't transform, but it seems willing to transform. So right now, I wouldn't necessarily give it a good review, but I wouldn't give it a negative review either. It's sort of in a potential egg form.
I agree.
But
I think this is like watchability right now is purely based on the kind of like trajectory, sort of. Like I am I shouldn't speak for you. I am hoping that it changes into something, like magically um sort of wonderful, but right now, like it's kind of laying the breadcrumbs for it, and maybe that trail will lead to somewhere exciting. So
Mhm.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
So I think we're unified on the are we going to keep watching it front. There's just enough there in the breadcrumbs where you're like, we might get to the candy house.
We
It
are
doesn't have to be an amazing candy house or anything, but it does have to have a candy cane, picket fence.
we are completely unified in the it's good enough to keep watching front.
Hmm. All
Perfect.
right, so that's it's been engine judged or judge engined or
We can work on that. We can
all right, we're gonna work on that. We're gonna workshop that one. Well, judgment engine, the engine judge. Anyway, the next part of our little spiel here is going to be more spoilerific. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to tune out right now. We're going to get into the meat of the thing. Spoiler slide.
It's happening. So we have 2 episodes, and I'm going to kind of speak as if they're sort of one combined unit, because that's what it feels like.
Sure.
We have 2 episodes of WandaVision where Wanda and Vision, the Marvel Cinematic Universe superheroes, are in a sort of black and white, kind of 70s-esque TV show. And
Even older,
they
I think. I think Bewitched was on in the 50s, and that's what I'm getting from this.
Oh, it might be even
50s,
earlier.
60s. There.
I didn't want to throw it too far back because that seemed like it would be rude. Um,
There's actually a callback to the Dick Van Dyke Show when they first come in the door. The living room is set up almost exactly like the Dick Van Dyke Show, and that was a 50s black and white show.
okay, so it's even it's even earlier than I thought. So essentially, it's an old show or old timey show sort of setup, and it's kind of got that old um, uh, I Love Lucy-esque sort of sitcom-y vibe to it. I don't know if that's the right way of explaining it. You can hop in on that. But essentially,
It's definitely a combo of a lot of different things. I think Bewitched is the major touch point,
mhm,
but all of them, and certainly I Love Lucy, with even the separated beds in the bedroom and stuff like that.
yeah,
One of the things that kind of didn't work for the imping of this old three camera sitcom was the way they actually structured the plot episodes. Like the going to dinner with the boss episode felt like kind of very loose. The jokes weren't quite there. The old shows actually used to be funny, Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. Whereas this didn't actually quite get to the point where it was actually like good jokes that you might have seen on I Love Lucy. The only time it really got there was the magic show, where they're actually kind of inventive. These old shows, even though they were fake-ish, they had this. They still could do things that were unexpected, but also were logical. So it was kind of like a high wire act that maybe this show doesn't land all the time in its impression of these shows.
it kind of follows them along as like a newly married sort of couple, and they get up to two little wacky adventures. One involving a date on a calendar that they think is maybe some sort of special important date, perhaps an anniversary or something, but neither of them can remember it. So wacky hijinks ensue. And the
Mm-hmm.
second one involves a magic show or some sort of talent show for the town, in which they perform a magic show. So
And
they
this is
have,
all without any Marvel context. There's no connection to the Avengers or anything. This is just presented as if this was a TV show, and the actual connection is hidden or hinted at.
yeah. So as Justin mentioned before, with the sort of like Twin Peaks-esque sort of something mysterious going on in the background sort of aspect of the show, there are bits and pieces happening that are leading to what we think may be some grand reveal at some point, but right now we just don't know. I think that's a very kind of general overview of it. Um,
Yeah, so given what you said, Jarrett, like we're sort of in this situation where what we have is basically two sort of parodies of 60s three camera sitcoms. Does that work? Did that work for you? Because we don't have the rest of it, right? We only have half.
yeah, so I think it all depends on what they do with it, right? Like we talked about the transformative element a little bit, and if they potentially keep like every couple episodes, they'll like jump into like a new like era of TV shows or a new like genre of TV shows, I think that could be exciting. Like imagine,
Mhm.
I don't know, like 3 episodes from now, it's like CSI, WandaVision, and they're trying to figure out something and they're like enhance, enhance, invert the colors, all
Mhm.
that sort of junk, right? So it depends on what they're like willing to I guess it depends on like how fun they want to be with it, right? Like how far are they willing to like let this concept stretch out, or is it going to be um Bewitched for 8 episodes or whatever, right? I think
Mhm.
that really matters because I don't think I can do Bewitched for 8 episodes.
They're definitely slow playing it, right? Like there was an episode of Supernatural where they did something like this. They got stuck in like a TV show world or something, and same with Mojo in the X-Men universe too. Those versions of this went through the TV shows very fast. It was like 2 minutes per show. You just hit the parodies as you were going. This sat and Bewitched for an hour,
Yeah.
right? Which is it's an interesting choice, right? It's much more restraint than I've ever seen any Marvel anything have.
Sure.
So that's kind of incredible. But it's also like, there's a reason Bewitched isn't it's only shown on nostalgia TV these days, right? It's not like the hottest thing in the universe. Um, so if they're going to go this slow, where maybe like they're only going to do one show per 2 or 3 episodes,
Hmm.
right? That might be too slow. Like that might not be exciting enough. Like, you know,
Yeah, I guess we'll see where the pace takes us. Okay.
yeah. It might be disappointing on the other hand, though, if the pace does crank up to 100% and the last 5 episodes are all CG. You know. space Nazi punching again, right? I don't want to see that either.
So this brings me to one of my big points about the show, which I wasn't sure about, and I'm curious as to see what your take is on it. Um, do you think the show should be taken seriously? And what I mean by that is like there is maybe some kind of dark brooding weird thing in the background, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten everything has been in black and white, but every now and then we'll have something pop out in color, and it's very awkward and it's very weird. Um, there was like the helicopter, and there was I think the blinking light on the toaster like was blinking red, and it wasn't black and white or something like that.
There are moments of discontinuity in reality, like when
Yes.
the radio goes on the fritz, or when Fred Malamud, their boss, is choking at dinner, and everyone is just sort of stuck in a weird pattern until she finally breaks out and tells Vision to help him. So there's moments where reality itself seems to not be flowing correctly.
So when you were saying you had Twin Peaks vibes, I got kind of Truman Show-esque vibes, where it's like um, there's a person and like his life is being controlled by like TV producers, essentially.
Hmm.
And that almost has sort of like a weird comedic element for me. Like it's not like a threat per se, right? Like do you perceive the weird altered reality things as like a threat, as some sort of like weird space creature or some kind of like Doctor Strange-esque thing, or is it or is it like some some weirdo villain who happens to be a TV producer? You know what I mean? Like, what is the scale that we're working with here?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, in the vibe I'm getting is Mojo Jojo. I'm getting evil television producer, and they're stuck in reality land, especially because the voice on the radio seems to be contacting her. Something's doing this to her,
Yeah,
uh, the voice on the radio. So that's my prediction anyway.
there's a character in Teen Titans. I had to look up his name. His name is Control Freak, and essentially he's like a stereotypical like sweaty nerd dude who has a magic remote control where he can like hop into different TV shows and movies and they become like reality. And
Hmm.
the whole time we were watching, I was like, oh no, is it going to be a control freak who's the bad guy? Is it just going to be a sweaty nerd at the end who's doing all of this? And
Hmm.
I don't know if that's like the fun conclusion or resolution, or if that's like the worst case scenario, like none of this matters, sort of.
Well, one interesting thing about this direction is it's way more comic booky. And I would say that in general about this show, WandaVision, is there's this weird vibe where they're actually hewing much closer to the comics. Like we actually see Vision's passing through things, powers a lot more. In the movies, he just punches people.
Yeah,
That's
he
pretty
doesn't
much his main thing,
he doesn't get a lot to do.
right? But in this, he's shown as a robot. You know, he eats gum and that causes him a problem. He passes through things.
Yeah, that
Same
was
with
cute.
Wanda. Powers are a little more elaborate compared to the movies, where again she is just smashing people with red, CG juice. Have some CG juice and hit you across the room, right? This actually seems like it might have read the comics. Whoever produced this might have read the comics, and if that's true, uh, Wanda does have reality altering powers, right? She famously causes the House of M and destroys all mutants in the world because she had a really bad day. Uh, and she gets rid of mutants. So her powers are kind of in line with this show. And I think that's an interesting direction considering how everything else in the MCU has hewed so closely to like your powers are you can hit things, you know?
Yeah. All right,
Right.
so
So
so is your hot take that really all of this is Wanda? This is all Wanda-ing the both of them into this weird TV land.
I think so. I think it's some kind of protective shell where someone is doing it to her, but her power is what produces it.
To kind of wrap things up, do you have any sort of specific tidbits that you wanted to touch on?
I had two things I wanted to mention. One is even though we talked about how just watching Bewitched in 2020 is a little boring, I do think this is maybe the most inventive thing I've seen the Disney Marvel conglomerate do.
It's at least the most it feels like they're trying to do something fun, right? Like whether or not they succeed, I don't know, I guess we'll find out. But it's not just it's one of the Marvel movies just kind of moved to like the Disney Plus TV screen.
Right. So that's a little better. Um, the other thing I wanted to say is if I could just speculate on
Oh,
the text
we
here.
love a good speculation.
Great. If we use TV as a medium for our meta text, right? We have these instances where unreality is intruding into the TV reality, but TV reality itself is a version of unreality, right? We all grow up with these shows, and the shows they're using were beyond fake. There was no married couple like Dick Van Dyke. There was no one who solved their problems like they do in Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and I Love Lucy, where everything just kind of cozily, wraps up at the end and everyone likes each other and misunderstandings are just, oh, it's a misunderstanding, right? That's just not how people operate. Uh, it made sense back then for the writing. Nowadays, of course, we're into these things like Shameless and Breaking Bad, where no one ever solves their problems. That's sort of what TV is showing us. So that's a different kind of unreality. But I think it's interesting that you're having reality sort of competing for your attention of control of the narrative here in this show. Uh, and what is the level that you want to live at, right? For us, the viewers, we want to live at this what's going on we want to know what's going on in the Twin Peak level, but maybe that's not actually the best level to be at. I mean, is this top level of this fake TV reality the most interesting and pleasant reality to live in? Like, if you had a choice, if you were an infinitely powerful witch goddess thing and you could live in any reality you wanted, what would you pick, right? Maybe the nice, clean one where everything works out anyway.
I'm gonna throw this out here. I think what you said was interesting, and I like the ideas behind it. However, I think it's too smart for Disney, and I think we are much more likely to get WandaVision Breaking Bad for one episode than we are to get that. But I would love to be proven wrong.
I'll say that there's a big clue in the CG that's used in the outro. That suggests to me that CG is coming, big CG is coming, because that's a very fancy outro
It is the
with
most
like
obnoxious outro.
it's incredibly fancy considering what we just seen, right? You would expect the outro to this to be kind of like the black and white with like the
Mhm.
ring or the curtain in
Yeah,
black
yeah,
and white,
yeah.
but this is like super high tech lights and flashing and stuff like that. So I assume we're heading towards the CG monster, at the end of this book. Like it's there. I think that's the clue, but
I could totally see it just being like a weird Doctor Strange space monster or whatever. It's
why
just one
not?
of those, just floating around, just chilling.
Doctor Who space monster. We're on a TV show here.
Oh, excuse me, excuse me. All right, do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Um, I am interested to see where this unreality thing goes. I doubt it can hit the heights of Twin Peaks. I don't believe it, but the so far interesting.
I think I think so far interesting is probably the best sort of box quote we can pull out right now. And on that note, this has been an episode of Judgment Engine for WandaVision episodes 1 and 2.
Dos Equis.
We will catch you later.